You two fellas to do is take those cleaning products and clean the inside of the car. I'm talking fast, fast, fast. You need to go in the back seat, scoop up all those little pieces of brain and skull. Get it out of there. Boys, get to work.
Please would be nice.
Come again?
I said a please would be nice.
Get it straight, Buster. I'm not here to say please. I'm here to tell you what to do. And if self-preservation is an instinct you possess, you better fucking do it and do it quick.
She didn't call the police. But it raises a question as what was happening in that period of time?
There's quite a bit of blood in the apartment, and, it's a pretty traumatic scene to find 4 dead college students in a residence.
The Lake Tahoe County coroner is commenting, saying the scene she saw on Sunday was gruesome.
The kids on the first floor, what did they see? How much of the room did they see? Why did they say unconscious as opposed to dead when there was blood running out of the house onto the outside of the house? And where did they get this unconscious from? Why are they saying that? Are there footprints in the bedroom on the 2nd and 3rd floor? If there was so much blood, then what you've got is a killer who certainly is stepping in the blood as he's killing these kids. But in addition to that, you've got the other 2 kids. You've got to eliminate their footprints. Then you've got the local police responding to unconscious. I guarantee you they didn't have any kind of slippers on. Then the question is, the forensic evaluation that you have, the crime scene was contaminated. We don't know if it's his or hers or 8 other people.
Horrific and a very large-scale crime scene, because you're going to be dealing with a number of different floors that need to be processed, the bedrooms where the crimes actually occurred, and then ingress and egress points. How did the alleged killer get inside the house?
From the 8-hour timeline gap to the surprising lack of physical evidence recovered from the scene, there's definitely reason to at least question whether the King Road residence was cleaned up in some capacity after it became a crime scene. To that end, is it likely that Brian aided in the cleanup, putting his knowledge of criminal investigations to use to mislead and thwart investigators? Did he have accomplices on the inside? Or are these possible cleanup efforts on the part of the roommates motivated purely by self-preservation concerning illicit activities that could have been going on inside the residence at 1122 King Road? We've heard this crime scene described as complex. The coroner described the scene as traumatic and bloody. First responders commented on the overwhelming smell of blood upon entering the residence. Maddie and Kaylee were found in a single bed on the 3rd floor with stab wounds. Xana was found laying on the floor with wounds which appeared to have been caused by a sharp-edged weapon, and Ethan was found with wounds later determined to be caused by sharp force injuries. We also know that there was something about this crime scene that immediately gave investigators the feeling that this was not a random attack, leading them to declare that the community at large was not at risk.
Art Betke, the mayor of Moscow, says he's hearing from police it's complicated.
Because at this point, with a case of this magnitude, you do not want to mess things up. Earlier today, the Idaho State Patrol was contemplating bringing in a mobile lab to assist in the processing of a rather complex scene.
Tonight, he says they're waiting for confirmation from the coroner's office on the cause of death, but there's no threat to the public.
Looking around, looking at the timeline when things happened, it turns out that this is a one-time event at one particular location. This does not carry on to the larger community.
So when I hear complex crime scene, the first thing that comes to mind for me is staging. Staging is a conscious criminal action on the part of an offender to thwart an investigation. This involves altering the scene to try to disguise what really happened. When reconstructing the crime scene, the investigating team must always be on the lookout for staging. Typically, evidence or bodies will be moved, or there will be signs of a break-in that did not actually happen. A murderer may move a body into the bathroom and pretend the victim fell when he or she got out of the bath or shower. Removing bloodstains with a cleanser like bleach is also not uncommon. However, invisible traces often remain, which can be subjective to forensic analysis. In this case, the timeline of events and specifically when investigators believe the murders happened are based on the statements of Dylan Mortensen, the phone records of Dylan and Bethany, and the video of the white Elantra.
It's 4 a.m. According to the affidavit, Zana receives a DoorDash delivery. And a source tells ABC News that the delivery is contactless and the order is left at the front door. A surviving roommate would later tell authorities that around this time, 4 a.m., she wakes up to what sounds like Kaylee playing with her dog in the room on the 3rd floor. She also reports hearing someone say, "There's someone here." 4:04 a.m., authorities say the white sedan is seen driving into the neighborhood a 4th time. 4:12 a.m., according to phone records obtained by police, Zana is awake and using TikTok. The affidavit states that the same surviving roommate says she hears what sounds like crying coming from Zana's room. She opens her door a 2nd time and says she hears a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At 4:17 a.m., this security camera on a neighbor's home picks up distorted audio of what sounds like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times. This camera is less than 50 feet from Zana's bedroom. The affidavit states the surviving roommate then opens her door a 3rd time. She sees a masked man walking past her towards the sliding glass door in the kitchen. In frozen shock, she locks her door. 4:20 a.m., police say the white sedan is seen leaving the neighborhood at a high rate speed.
But what if she's lying and the white Elantra was simply leaving the scene to dispose of evidence before returning once again around 9 a.m.? What if the DoorDash delivery was staged? Was that really Xana on TikTok or someone using her phone? All of these suspect descriptions and reports of specific words and phrases that Dylan allegedly heard, it all just kind of sounds very made up to me. And it has me wondering how true these accounts are and if the time of death was actually as early as 2 a.m. I say this because this crime seems to have all the markings of a crime of passion, which typically involve excessive violence like multiple stabbings or gunshots. Most burglars, on the other hand, are opportunists and will kill only if they panic. Such murders will generally not be as violent as those where anger against the victim is the motive. When a victim has died in a violent manner and it looks as if the motive is burglary, the investigator must always consider the possibility that staging has taken place. Is it possible that perhaps when Maddie and Kaylee got home at around 1:56, there was an argument or an altercation between the victims, the roommates, and possibly others who may have been there or who may have showed up to the house? Was the narrative of the 4 a.m. intruder then created to cover up the altercation? It's definitely possible. But let's talk about forensics. The PCA gave us 2 key pieces of forensic evidence. One was the K-bar sheath with the DNA on the button buckle that was connected to Koberger via his dad's trash, and 2 was the latent footprint just outside Dylan's door. Regarding the sheath, I'm comfortable saying that I believe it was purposefully planted at the scene in an attempt to mislead investigators and or possibly intended to be a calling card of some sort. This is just based on its positioning on the bed next to a victim. It just seems too curated for me, rather than something that may have flown off his person in a scuffle or something like that. It also seems like a major leap that he would accidentally leave it at the crime scene in that manner, given the reported planning and his knowledge of criminology. If he did leave the sheath by accident, he had every opportunity to recover it, including his visit back to the crime scene around 9 a.m. It's also possible that he went back to the crime scene at 9 a.m. and staged the sheath at that point, after getting rid of maybe the actual murder weapon when he was south of Moscow on his way back to Pullman. It should be noted that we don't actually know what the murder weapon is, or how many there may be. Now, a K-bar is a decent sized knife, and it's definitely an efficient killing instrument with a blade measuring at 7 inches. For reference, most chef's knives typically measure around 8 inches. So it's not the only big knife that may have been available at the house that could have done this kind of damage. Just saying. And with regards to the latent shoe print, this print would not be visible to the naked eye. Investigators located the print during the second processing of the crime scene by ISP forensic team by first using a presumptive blood test and then amino black, a protein stain that detects the presence of cellular material. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans type shoe sole just outside the door of Dylan's room located on the second floor. Note, it does not state what relevant size this shoe print is, so it really could be anybody's shoe print. If this latent print is the only type of footprint on scene, this could suggest possible crime scene cleaning because it's highly unlikely that the suspect would be able to escape the scene without tracking blood throughout the house. And if someone did potentially make an attempt at cleanup, they wouldn't have been able to detect this latent print. And the last point I really want to make here with regards to the forensics is that there really wasn't that much physical evidence that was collected from the scene, despite the contained indoor crime scene with multiple areas of interest. 113 pieces of physical evidence seems like a lot, but when we're talking about 4 victims and a fairly gruesome scene, it really isn't a lot. To put it into perspective, and this isn't a perfect analysis at all, but divide 113 by 4, that's only 28 pieces of evidence, physical evidence per victim, which seems a bit thin to me when we're talking about hairs, fibers, bloodstains, etc.
Cases that I've covered with all of the different evidence that's entered in a court of law, this particular crime is going to have multiple locations. Let's just start with the inside of the house. I mean, don't get me started. There's 2 bedrooms at least. There's the entrance point, and there's whatever was tracked, and there's all the different hair, fiber, fingerprints that anybody has left behind that needs to be excluded. That's a lot in a house like that. It's not a single-family home. There's lots of boyfriends and girlfriends and friends and former tenants, etc. Then there's the outside of the house, wherever that killer left, and whatever footprints, shoe prints, whatever trail of anything he or she may have left. Then there are all 3 floors. Then there are 6 cars, presumably each roommate might have had a car. Maybe Ethan had one too. It sounds like a lot of places where a lot of things have to be looked at. And so that's why I sort of thought 113, but this isn't my expertise, it's yours.
Right. So, and I appreciate that, but you have to think about it. These investigators, I'm sure they've started to vet those locations. Maybe there are certain locations where there was not any evidence that was found. Maybe not inside of the vehicles, or maybe not. You didn't find any evidence at the bar. Not physical evidence that needed to be collected and tested. That's what I mean. So you know, you never can tell. I would hope that they have collected as much evidence as possible, because look, 113, you want to see as much evidence as possible in a case like this. But if 113 is the number that they have, then that's what they have.
So I hope this gave you something to think about with regards to what forensic evidence we actually do have. While there are so many unknowns, we do have some facts to work with, and they're just really kind of confusing in nature and not really as conclusive as we'd like them to be. But I do want to leave you with this point, and it's that the most, quote, logical explanation or Occam's razor scenario doesn't take into account deception and intentional efforts to thwart and contaminate. When a crime scene has been tampered with, it is imperative that investigators identify these attempts immediately so they can accurately understand what happened. This case stands out because even the most commonly accepted narrative of what happened, that this was a lone psycho killer intruder who committed these gruesome crimes in a very, very brief window, motivated perhaps by anger towards women. There's the whole incel theory and an obsession that developed on social media and maybe even in real life. There are still so many questions that remain unanswered in this scenario. For me, it all comes down to that 8 hours, the failure to call 911 right away, no forced entry, and the 2 unharmed survivors, and what impact all of this has on the crime scene and the physical evidence. The scene was undoubtedly interfered with, but was this intentional crime scene staging or unintentional contamination?